Hi everyone, I am back with another video. If you don't know me, my name is Sherry. I create content about IVF, all about our fertility journey, and now more so motherhood. I got so much good feedback from you guys when I posted my donor egg story, and thank you for all of the lovely comments and the support, surrounding that. It can be a little scary sometimes to share that, but you know that I have been very open and honest about my road to success with motherhood, and there was no way that I could leave that out because that was a huge part of our success story. So thank you for all of your support. If you are new here, please stick around. I create content about our IVF journey, about motherhood more so now, and I really want to get deeper into the donor egg experience. Okay, so I decided to create a series all about using an egg donor. So it's going to be a 5-part series. There'll be a new video every week. So you will see me making videos and releasing them once a week for the next 5 weeks. So I'm very excited about that. But I just felt like it was really important to kind of dive deeper into these topics. I don't think that it's something that I could have covered in just one video. So in the series today we'll be talking about how to choose an egg donor, and I'll give you guys some feedback on how we chose our egg donor. From there we'll get into how to emotionally prepare for using an egg donor. So there'll be some great topics within there. I do have some digital products that can kind of help support you along that journey as well. And then we'll get into financially how to plan for purchasing donor eggs, because it can be very expensive. And I just have some ideas that might be able to help, because the first thing we think about is, man, this is too expensive and it's unattainable for me. And there are a lot of ways that you can go about, doing this if it can fit within your budget. So I have some tips there as well. And then the next topic is going to be on how to talk to others about using an egg donor. You don't have to tell anyone about it, but it's completely up to you. You might want to share with family and friends just to have support. You might, not want to share at all, and that's fine too. But being able to talk to your donor conceived child about how they were conceived is very important in helping them to understand their journey from a really young age. So I have a very exciting product to share with you when we get to that topic. And then last but not least, we're going to talk about what I wish I knew before choosing an egg donor. And then last but not least, we're going to talk about what I wish I knew before starting. So that should be a fun topic. It will give me a really good chance to reflect and share those reflections with you at the same time. So I hope that you're excited about this series as much as I am, and I hope that it gives you some really good resources and tools to hopefully help support you along this journey. Now, if you're not subscribed, make sure you subscribe to my channel, hit the like button on this video, drop me a comment about what you're doing if you're in this donor process, where you are. I would love to hear back from you to see where everyone is. So let's just go ahead and get started. If you're new to knowing what an egg donor is, I'm just going to start there. So let's just start from the very, very beginning. So when you're using an egg donor, you are using eggs that have been donated by a woman who has decided for whatever reasons she wants to donate her eggs. In a lot of cases, sometimes these women just want to help another family. For the most part, they want to help someone achieve their goals to become parents, which I find to be so selfless and such the most beautiful gift that anyone can give, especially because a lot of the egg donors are younger, so they're probably under 30. A lot of clinics don't want donors over a certain age, and it varies by clinic, so you might want to ask. I know that our clinic had someone who was 31, but she had very successful donations in the past, and a lot of her donations resulted in pregnancy. So that was something that was kind of an exception that people could kind of decide if they wanted to go that route. I'm not going to share too much demographic information really about our donor, because it is confidential. It is anonymous to protect my daughter and to protect our wonderful donor as well. But I will say she was under 30. I'll just say that. But yeah, that is what an egg donor is. They donate their eggs to families either through clinics or egg banks, or it can be a known donor. So a known donor is someone that it could be your sister, it could be a cousin. I have friends who have done that before, where maybe a close relative has said, hey, I would love to be your donor, and you can bring them to your clinic and they can get screened. They can do all the blood work and all the lab testing to make sure that they health-wise are a good candidate. They will screen them for genetic disorders to make sure that there's nothing that, you know, could cause a problem. If your partner, you know, has that genetic condition as well, they want to make sure that they don't, you know, have the same genetic condition, just to make sure that, you know, the baby that comes is as healthy as possible. So yeah, the different types of donors, we just talked about a known donor. So some people do that, and that is completely up to you and your known donor. Some people don't charge anything for that. You know, the person that decides to be the donor, they just want to give it as a gift, and they don't charge anything for that. Some people do have a rate that they want to charge. That's fine too. I just encourage, if you go the known donor route, make sure you have very clear documentation and legal documents outlining all of the parameters about that donation in terms of, you know, parental rights and all that. I am not an attorney, so I can't give you advice on what to put into that document, but I do encourage you to look into an attorney who specifies in family building, like adoption, surrogacy, IVF, and specifically egg donation. So going that known route, you know, make sure that you have all those consents in place. Then the other options are, you can go through your clinic, which is what we did. Our clinic had a pool of donors that we were able to choose from. And so that made it really easy on us because, you know, all the legal documentation and all that was already in place, and all we had to do was sign paperwork. So that's a good option if your clinic has, you know, great donors to choose from. We were with CNY originally, and one of the reasons why we decided to switch to Utah Fertility Clinic, believe it or not, is they had a more diverse pool of donors of color. And so for me, that was really important, you know, to make sure that, you know, you have to be comfortable with your donor. Like, you can't just be like, oh, I kind of like the donor. Like, I just kind of like, I wanted to really feel motivated and good about my donor, and I loved her. Like, from when I saw her, I read her, you know, profile and all that information. I really was like, you know, wow, this is someone that I would really be happy to accept, you know, like a donation from. So that was important to me. It was important to have diversity as well, just so that, you know, my daughter could see herself in her family. So yeah, that was important. So you can go through your clinic. You can also go through an outside egg bank. And so the way that the egg banks work is you have to make sure that your clinic will accept egg lots from these clinics, from these egg banks. You can buy eggs kind of independently in lots. So the lots usually come in lots of 6 to 8 eggs. And so you just have to decide, you know, like what your clinic will take. And so you'd have to have a conversation with them to make sure, number one, that they work with that clinic, with that egg bank. And number two, that, you know, you want to make sure that the donors at the egg bank that you work with, that they can give you good statistics on these donors. And really this goes for anyone. So whether you're using a known donor or someone from your clinic or someone, you know, from an egg bank, you want to be able to see their past history in terms of, you know, have they had children before? You know, were they successful pregnancies? And if they've donated before, have those donations resulted in live births? You also want to know their genetic history, all the health information to make sure that they are healthy. It's not just about looks. It's about making sure that you have the best, you know, viable, healthy option to bring a healthy baby into the world. So there's a lot of different things that go into it. So those are the 3 types: a known donor, working with your clinic's donor database, and then working with an outside egg bank. Those are the ways that you can get eggs. Now, within all of these options, especially more so the clinic side and the clinic side and the egg bank side, you can either choose, at least with the clinic, you can choose to cycle. Okay, so with these options, if you're using a known donor, then you probably are going to cycle them to be able to get the eggs from them, what they call it to be like a live donation. So they're going to go through basically like an egg retrieval. You know, they're going to take the medications to stimulate their eggs to be released. And when their eggs are ready, they're going to be given a trigger shot, and they will go through an egg retrieval, and you will get however amount of eggs you decided that, you know, works in the contract. Now with known donors, I think I'm pretty sure that you get all of the eggs that they produce, unless that donor has decided, hey, I'm going to donate, you know, to you, and then I want to give some to an egg bank and sell them that way. I don't know. But for the most part, the known donors are pretty much live donations to my knowledge, and you should be able to get all those eggs. If I was using a known donor, I would want to be able to get all of the eggs, because the egg banks, they sell frozen eggs for the most part, and those eggs are in lots of 6 to 8. So you have to pay per lot. So imagine if you had a known donor and, or, you know, a live donor through your clinic, and you were able to get, you know, all of the eggs, or 25 eggs, or however, more than 6 to 8. So those are kind of the differences. Now with the clinic, you can either ask them if they have a frozen egg bank, or if they have donors that are willing to go through an egg retrieval to give you eggs like a live donor. Our clinic, Utah Fertility Clinic, at the time, they will give you up to 25 eggs, which to me, across most clinics that I've heard of, they don't offer that many eggs. So just imagine being able to have 25 eggs, because if you do frozen eggs, you might lose some in the thaw. You might, you know, you're going to lose some of them are not going to all fertilize. Some are not going to all make it to blast if you decide to take them to blast. And then some are not all going to make it through genetic testing if that's something that you decide. So the more you start with, the better off you'll be. We chose to use frozen eggs because that, for me, like for us, just worked better, because we didn't have to wait for anyone to go through an egg retrieval. We were able to purchase a good amount of eggs, and we were happy with that. And so, you know, from that, we were able to end up with 7 embryos total. 6 of them are normal, and then 1 of them was abnormal. So that just kind of, like, you know, shows you how the drop off goes. I think we started with 20 eggs. So 20 eggs, ended up with 6 normal ones after genetic testing. So yeah, frozen eggs and, you know, getting fresh eggs, or live, like a live donation, they all have their pros and cons. I would say, you know, the pros for, you know, a live donor, a fresh donation is, you know, you get more eggs, you don't have to wait for them to thaw, so you're not going to be risking losing any in the thaw. None of that kind of stuff. Some cons to consider would be, and then you might get more eggs, that's another pro, if you do like a live donor. Some of the cons could be that if the donor maybe doesn't take her medications correctly, maybe she doesn't trigger the right way. Your clinic should be really good about the donors, and I would always go with someone who's already donated before. Now, there are situations where, you know, there's a new donor and she's got like a really healthy record, and, you know, maybe her egg counts in the beginning are really high, and you might be willing to take a risk. But I personally feel like you're going to spend so much money on this that I would rather go with someone who's a proven donor. So that means that they have donated before, they're taking their medicines the right way, and they're producing a good amount of eggs, so that you know what you're kind of getting yourself into. Now, anything can happen, something can go wrong, but I personally would have felt more comfortable if we used a live donor, if she, you know, had been someone that was proven. Now, the donor that we chose, she was proven, she had donated before, so I knew all of her stats. I knew, you know, like how many eggs she produced. I knew like some of, you know, the amount of like live births she's had and all of those things. So even though we used frozen eggs from her, she was still a proven donor. Now, one thing to keep in mind with donors is when you find someone that you like, and we'll get into how to get to that point a little bit later, egg donors can only donate, I believe, up to 6 times. I think that's like an FDA regulation, you know, something where they just can't donate more than that time. So if you find someone and you know that they've donated in the past, you definitely want to make sure that you are, you know, trying to expedite the decision-making process to use that donor, because the last thing you want to happen is to find someone that you love, and then because you've had this like decision paralysis, that they're not available because you didn't, you know, execute quick enough. Now, it's a very important decision to make, and so we're going to get into some of the tips on how how we got to the point of choosing a donor, you know, pretty quickly. So we can jump into that now. So that's all the information I have on, you know, the types of donors, where you get the egg, you know, the eggs from, all those different places. If you have any questions about that, drop them below and I'll be happy to answer them. Now, the biggest thing is, how do you choose a donor? Okay, so like I mentioned before, we had chosen a donor at our clinic in New York. And then we ended up at Utah Fertility Clinic. And the reason why was because I just felt like, for one, we only bought 4 eggs from our clinic in New York. And I really wanted our children to be full genetic siblings. And we knew that we wanted more than one child. And we only ended up with 1 embryo. And so we kind of just sat on that embryo for a while and explored Utah Fertility Clinic. And they actually had a lot more options for us. And so we still have that embryo frozen. But we decided to proceed with Utah because we ended up with more embryos, so we knew that we could have full genetic siblings. And so the things that were hanging me up at first were, of course, you have to grieve your genetics. And we'll get more into the emotional side of how to prepare for using an egg donor in the next episode, so stay tuned and make sure you come back and watch that. But once I wrapped my head around using an egg donor and that this was going to be the path that we decided to proceed on, my husband left it up to me a lot because he knew that I was the one that was going to be losing my genetics. And so, you know, even though he had feelings about it and things like that, he was just like, you know, I really want you to be comfortable with this. So, you know, let's choose someone together, but I really want you to love who we choose. And so I thought that was so sweet. And so that's kind of what we did. But I would say, you know, there were some things that were important to me. I wanted someone that looked like me in terms of a donor. But at first, I was trying to find my twin. I wanted someone who, I'm tall, I'm 5'10". I wanted someone who was 5'10". I wanted someone who had, like, you know, eyes similar to mine. And I was just looking for myself, basically. And so I think for me, like, the height thing was a big deal because I'm such a tall woman. And I just wanted, you know, like, I always envisioned, like, my children to be, like, maybe my height. But if you don't know me or my husband is 5'7". So even if we did use my eggs, there's no guarantee that my child would be my height or taller. So I let that go. Then I was looking at their backgrounds. To some people, education is really important, you know, all those things. But to me, things like education and other things like that are learned behaviors or learned, you know, ideals. And I really feel strongly that the way that you raise your child in your household, you know, is the way that they are going to be accustomed to looking at and executing life. So that was not important to me. It was not important to me that our donor had a college degree or anything like that, because I knew that, you know, raising our child in our household, my husband and I are both, you know, college educated. She's going to be exposed to that. Our families, you know, are college educated, and she's going to be exposed to that regardless. So that was not a big deal for me. But if it's a deal breaker for you, by all means, make sure that that's something that is on your list. I would not make it a high priority, though. That's just my opinion. But to each their own. I think that whatever you decide to do is fine. I did want someone that looked like similar to me, or someone that was like, could be in my family. And so instead of looking for like exact matches, I looked for someone that maybe had like a similar eye shape to me or my husband, or maybe, you know, like certain facial features were similar to myself or my husband. I didn't care about hair color. I didn't care about, you know, I just didn't care about certain things. I definitely wanted, you know, to make sure that I chose someone that looked like, you know, it could be a good mixture of me and my husband. And so whatever that means to you is what I would say look for in the donor. But I would say choosing someone that looks exactly like you, that is like exactly a replica of your educational background and all those things, you may not find that person, and you're going to be looking for a long time. If you're a woman of color, it's even harder to find someone. So we kind of have to take certain things off of that checklist that in the long run, to me, don't really matter that much. So those were some of the physical characteristics. Like I said, I let go of height, so that opened the door to a lot more donors. And once I started to let go of some of those things, like you really have to like sit and maybe journal about it, maybe meditate on it, talk to maybe a therapist or a friend who's going through the same thing, and really just someone who will listen to like all the qualities that you're looking for, maybe like have a couple of people that you're interested in and kind of compare. But what really stood out to me was, number one, my donor's health background. She was not a carrier for any genetic diseases. My husband's not a carrier either, so we didn't have to worry about that. I wanted to make sure that she had, you know, positive, like, I wanted to make sure that she had success from her previous donations, that she was producing a good amount of eggs, and from those eggs, people got, like, I was able to get information about out of how many eggs that they got, how many ended up with, you know, how many ended up being normal euploid embryos, how many were abnormal. Those are the details to me that are more important than the physical thing, because you can find the most perfect physical person, like they could look exactly like you, they could have the most beautiful eyes, all these things, but then if their genetic history is not great, then is it really a good match? And so that's something to just consider, you know, because you're thinking about, you know, your child's health long term. So yeah, those were the things that were important to me. So yes, I would say if someone says appearance is not important, they're probably not telling the full truth. Now, I know some clinics overseas, I don't think you even can see pictures, but I know our clinic provided adult and baby pictures. So, and some clinics only provide baby pictures, which is kind of cool too, because, you know, let's like, I don't know, how they look like as an adult, it matters sometimes, but I don't know. That's up to you if that matters or not. I was interested in seeing both. And so for me, the most important things to evaluate were the health background. You know, I wanted to know their history, the genetics, their past donations, the live births. That was kind of first and foremost. Once I narrowed down people based on looks, I would say I was kind of going between two different donors. And so once I narrowed those down to 3, and that was probably based on like appearance and those things. But then I narrowed it down even further based on the health. So that's why I say looks are maybe not as important, but looks are probably what's going to attract you to a donor to begin with, right? It's going to make you say, hey, I could see myself in this person. I could see, you know, like a child, you know, what my future child might look like, all those things. That is naturally what you're going to be drawn to. So to say that it doesn't matter is not realistic. It does. But the next important thing is going to be their health history. And so that's how I narrowed it down from 3 to 1. And then you have to look at the availability. And so since we use frozen eggs, our donors' eggs were available right away. But sometimes if you're using a fresh donor, they might be getting ready to cycle for someone else, or they might have just finished cycling for someone else, and so they kind of need to take a break between those times. So it really depends on your timeline too. How soon do you want this process to get started? Ours went pretty fast. I would say we started in June. We had our consultation in June of 2022, and we had our embryos created. We had picked our donor. Talashi flew out to the clinic, left his sperm sample. They fertilized those eggs. They did the genetic testing. We got the results back, and by the end of August, I would say, we had our embryos. And so it probably took like a month total for the embryos to get, for the sperm drop off, for the embryos to get created, to wait for the genetic testing. It probably took like a month or a little over that. But I had to come out and do some testing. So I had to do a saline ultrasound. I had to get a hysteroscopy to remove some polyps. I had some prep work to do on my own. And so that's how we were able to choose our donor. I hope that this is really helpful for you. But in all of these steps that I'm going to be sharing in all these episodes, I really encourage you to pause at every step. Choosing a donor is a big deal. It's a huge deal, because on one hand, you're excited about the fact that you've chosen your donor, but then in the shower, you might be like, oh wow, but my genetics, you know, you're going to have that back and forth sometimes. I mean, I'll say honestly, I don't think about that a lot, especially now that my daughter's here. I think maybe more so when I was pregnant, I was thinking those thoughts like, is she going to know that I'm her mom? Is she going to, you know, look at me as her mom and stuff? And let me tell you, the first time you hear them say mama or mommy, like, there is nothing else in the world that matters. Like, all the fears that I had about those things, or the comfort she finds in my arms when she's sick, or the way she looks up and smiles at me, or the way we do our dance parties, like, I could not imagine my life without my daughter, you know, like what was my life even doing before this? So a lot of the fears and the things that we have, I know that they are valid and they matter and they really shape this experience, but try your best not to dwell too hard on the fear and the uncertainty, because I promise you the love outweighs all of that. And yeah, I mean, I do get a little nervous sometimes about when I'm going to have that, you know, conversation with her. I mean, I told her about it like probably the day or two that after she came home. And we talk about it sometimes, like, you know, when she's probably couldn't really understand what was going on, but it's more practice for me because I really want this to be a part of our normal conversation so that when she is at the age where she understands, she's going to know that families are built all kinds of way and they're built out of love. You know, it's not all about DNA. You know, we have dogs. She loves the dogs. She knows that those are like her furry siblings, but they didn't come from mommy's womb, but they're still our family, and you know, they still belong in our family. Everyone has a place. Everyone is here because of love. And so I encourage you, when you're thinking about this, think about the story that you might share later when you're worried about, like, you know, are they going to look like me? Are they going to act like me? Are they going to this, that? I mean, my daughter looks just like my husband. So even if we used my eggs, she looks like a lighter version of my husband, like a copy and paste. But I do notice sometimes, like, some of her gestures look like me a little bit. Like, people will say that her eyes look like mine. That was something that was important, you know, to me, was to find a donor that had maybe a similar eye shape to mine or my husband's and stuff, so that, you know, when I look into her eyes, I see that. And I just think that the more, like, you're around someone, you kind of end up looking like them sometimes. I hear that all the time about my best friend and I, but not to digress, but all of the fear that you have about this process, choosing the donor, all these things, like, I realized that a lot of it became my own anxiety that I created. Like, it wasn't because that was really how it is. Now, it's valid in those moments. I'm not saying that you worrying about certain things is not important. It is. But in the grand scheme of things, when you bring your baby home in your arms and you're looking down at them, or you're breastfeeding, you know, like, you're their mother at the end of the day. You're their father at the end of the day. And I was able to carry my daughter to full term. You know, it's a blessing that you're able to go through pregnancy. I was able to feel her move. I was able to see her grow. That helps a lot. And then I was able to breastfeed, or, like, you know, pump and give her breast milk for the first almost 7 months of her life, which is really special to me to be able to do that. And I feel very connected to her. Like, you know, if she is anywhere in the house and I feel like she's too quiet, or if I'm upstairs and she's in her room, you know, and I hear like a little whine, I'm like, what's going on? Where is she? Like, the connection and the bond is going to be there. So I encourage you to make your choice, make it, you know, carefully, but also make it expeditiously, and don't take too long to dwell, because then sometimes when you take a long time, that fear seeps in, and that fear can kind of overcome the love. And I always say, just focus on the love that's going to be there, because the lengths that you've gone through to use an egg donor, to become a parent, that is no easy feat. A lot of people give up when they're told that they need to use an egg donor. Like, what if I had just said, oh, well, you know, we're just not going to be parents now because I'm not open to other ideas of how we can build out our family. If you have an open mind, I always say it's not a matter of if you'll become a parent, it's a matter of when you'll become a parent. And egg donation is a beautiful way to get there. So I hope that this was helpful. If you have any questions at all, please let me know down in the comments. I do want to let you guys know that I do offer one-on-one coaching now. I get a lot of questions. I can't always answer them all the time, but I offer an hour-long session. You can check that out at the link below to my Stan store. You can, you know, take a look at everything that's involved there. But I would love to be able to talk to you all more, you know, through and give you that, like, structured support that you need. And so I started, you know, to offer this IVF coaching session. So I'm really interested in talking to you guys about that. I'm not a doctor, so I can't give you any medical advice, but I can give you some emotional support and some structured planning in whatever place you are in your process. I've been through IVF, you know, traditionally, where I did my own egg retrievals. I've switched around clinics. We, you know, travel for IVF. So I have a lot of insight that I can help you with if you're at any of these different phases. And then we've done donor egg IVF. So if you need that support, that additional support, please feel free to schedule a session with me down below. If you have any questions about the sessions and what's included in all of that, it's linked in my Stan store about everything that comes, you know, with that session. But I would love to get to know you guys more outside of, you know, YouTube and just DMs and Instagram. I can only answer so many questions because I have a really busy schedule, especially now that I'm a mom. But I wanted to, you know, offer you guys this as an additional means of support because I know how much and how daunting this process can be. And sometimes you just need a friend to kind of give you some structure on where to start, where to go next, and then, you know, kind of look at maybe what some goals should be. So I hope that that was helpful. If you have any questions, please just let me know. But stay tuned for the next episode in this series. I'm really excited about it. We're going to be talking all about how to emotionally prepare once you've chosen your donor for using donor eggs through IVF. All right, so stay tuned. Talk to you guys soon.